Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Ultras on TS. I'm Josh Piercy, joined as always by Jeff Wall and Kurt Black. Now before we get going here, just a reminder to like, share, and subscribe to the video. Subscribe to True Sports on YouTube, as well as follow True Sports TV on Instagram. So fellas, another weekend in the books, and we have plenty to talk about, some controversial decisions and some good goals. Today we're going to be talking about Manchester City having a pretty hard time against Leicester today. We blew it. Turns out Bayern Munich aren't invincible after all. We're going to be talking about the transfer window that closes in just a week's time, next Sunday, October 5th. And a bit of a handball situation, how fellas think the handball rule is being implemented. The new FIFA rule obviously affects all the leagues. In the Premier League this week, it was a little bit shocking. But first, we're going to go over to London, where Chelsea had themselves a pretty bad day. They were in a sticky situation. At halftime, they were down 3-0 to West Bromwich Albion. They came back. They ended up tying the game at 3, courtesy of a 93rd minute Tammy Abraham goal. But Frank Lampard's men again looked a little shaky. Kurt, not a great day for Chelsea.
No, and I think I'm going to continue saying this the rest of the season on, despite all the really flashy, honestly, brilliant signings. I agree with every player they've brought in. I just don't see them as a team that's truly ready to compete for the title yet. I don't see any issue with them being in the top 4 or competing for European competition. That should be their goal. But I see glaring holes, I see an aging defense, and I see an overpriced goalkeeper. They did just go out and get Mendy, which I honestly predict him taking over the number 1 keeper's position by the end of the season, because I don't think there's much faith in Kepa whatsoever.
Well, speaking of Edouard Mendy, they signed him recently. Edouard Mendy came from Nice in the French league. Rennes, sorry.
But Lampard said that, who was it? Was it their top scout that said this keeper perfectly fits the mold of the team that they're planning on putting forward? So even if Kepa is the keeper for this year, or even till January, I think the writing's on the wall that he's going to be shown the door. It's just whether they can get someone to take him and at least recoup some money. They're going to take a loss. That's inevitable.
To put the Mendy signing in a bit of context, we're not talking about a world beater here. This is a guy that came from Rennes. 28 years old. He's 6'6". He's got 23 clean sheets over the last 2 seasons. So certainly a good keeper. But Jeff, I wouldn't say the signing that they wanted, especially considering options like Onana and Jan Oblak, who are seemingly available.
Yeah, I mean, I think they would be more ideal, but I think eventually they realize either whether it be FFP reasons or just general financial restrictions, right? You can't just spend that much money on this many guys when you don't have any fans in the stands, right, to kind of get in more cash. But I honestly do think, looking into him a little bit and understanding like where he's kind of come from, he is kind of a late bloomer, right? Whereas Kepa kind of came onto the scene a little bit earlier. Mendy is much more a late bloomer. He's kind of gotten, I believe it was Rennes or Stade Rennais, coming up through the French sides and then eventually getting them promoted and then getting his last team up to second place in Ligue 1, which is definitely nothing to stick your nose up at. But I think one of the things I got to disagree with you here, Kurt, is that I like the signings in terms of I like the players. However, to me, the way they have tried to go about their business, Frank Lampard and Chelsea, has just been like almost mindless. Look, I'm not going to be a manager anytime soon. I'm not going to be a sporting director anytime soon. But when I look at this, I look at Chelsea's strengths. What's your strength? You're great at attacking. You have one of the best attacks in the Premier League. You guys were amazing. You had that chemistry, which is very important. But then you bring in about 3 new attacking players, and those other guys get a seat on the bench. Okay, how does that make any sense? Your defense was terrible. Everybody blames Kepa. And, I'm not going to say Kepa's the best keeper in the world. Certainly not. But look what just happened to a team that just got promoted in West Brom. West Bromwich Albion scored 3 goals on you in one half. How does that make any sense? Clearly, the problems were bigger than Kepa, and clearly, the way they've tried to solve their problems and get better as a club and as a team, Frank Lampard has completely just whiffed on. It's absolutely pathetic, and I want nothing but the worst for this team, to be completely honest with you. I just don't understand. Look, man, players don't have a long-term career, but Mason Mount, he was brought up through Chelsea. Now he's going to have to move on. Tammy Abraham, probably going to have to move on. How, doing what they did, how does that make any sense? And to me, for Frank Lampard, especially to Mason Mount, who helped him out at Derby and now Chelsea, what a slap in the face to him. Honestly, I want nothing but the worst for them just because of this disrespect.
And to your point, Jeff, I thought that Mason Mount was one of the best players on the pitch for Chelsea yesterday. I mean, he scored the first goal that started the big comeback. And yeah, he looked like he was lively the whole game. People who didn't look like they were lively, Thiago Silva was just mismarking all over the place. Marcus Alonso doesn't look like he knows how to defend anymore at all. And when you get scored on from a corner, which just seems to be like something you could coach, something that the manager has a lot of influence in, especially when it's by Kyle Bartley from West Brom. There's definitely a problem there. Kurt, Frank Lampard, I mean, is this down to him? Is this down to the team that he put out there?
A little bit, but it depends on what he has. And it brings full circle about what we've all been talking about, is this team isn't ready. And as Jeff said, and we've all said it, their defense is a glaring hole. Yeah, Kepa's not great, but would he be at least adequate if they had a solid defense there? It would probably be better. And then they did spend a little bit of money, or was it a free transfer when they got Silva? And unfortunately, he was a great defender, world class, but he's old. So he would have been fine to bring in as, a nice option as in a rotation, but they needed to bring a younger center back in to really shake up that defense.
And it's not only that. I think that if you look at Frank Lampard's career as a whole, like including his playing days, the guy never defended when he was playing. He was always going forward. He was one of those midfielders that never even made the effort to come back. And it's really seeming like it's coming down to Lamps really not caring about defense at all. And I mean, this is a team that was scored on a bunch last season. They've been scored on a bunch this season already. So, Jeff, I mean, where do they go from here?
Down. They're just going down. I don't know if they're going to get out of the top six necessarily, but clearly, there's something missing. And, it looks like Lampard's going to follow the trend of every single Chelsea manager before him, 2 years and done. So, I mean, I just don't see it like how good Leicester look today. I know we'll get to them. How good they look today, how other teams look really, really good. I mean, even Arsenal. I mean, I know, I don't want to overhype them too much. I don't want to give any more fodder for Arsenal fan TV. And I know they're facing Liverpool when this video comes out. But they all look a little bit better. They just all look a little bit better than Chelsea. And to me, there's no way they can make top six.
Well, speaking of top six and maybe managers in a little bit of hot water today, Pep Guardiola is certainly one of those guys right now. 5-2, the final score against Leicester, a hat trick for Jamie Vardy. A couple of penalties given away by Eric Garcia, who was in, of course, they have a new signing, center back today. But City didn't look like they were on it at all. Kurt?
No. Well, it's easy to see. Look at the score, 5-2, a thrashing. They were outplayed in every area of the pitch. And it just starts to add, as you just alluded to, Josh, there's a trend going towards, is Pep Guardiola a failure at Man City?
Kurt, we've talked a lot about what City done wrong, but what about Leicester? What did they do right today to completely thrash the Citizens?
Their offense, again, speaking the obvious because they thrashed them with 5 goals, but their offense, again, is unstoppable. And what impresses me the most about Leicester is, even though they didn't lose any huge major pieces this year, but they always have someone come out of nowhere, become a great player, and then they leave. And it doesn't hurt them whatsoever. And their scouting is fantastic. They always replace. They're a spectacle. Just as an organization, I couldn't be more impressed.
But we just seen them lose Ben Chilwell at left back, and now we see this young man, James Justin, come in. And I thought he had an incredible game. He looks like a really good young player. So it looks like Brendan Rodgers is filling those holes. in the right ways, Jeff.
I absolutely think so, and I think he needs to get a lot more credit. I hope that Leicester give him the time he needs to allow him to build a squad that, is going to give up a few players here and there throughout the years, because they just aren't that – they're not that superpower club, right? Like, they're no matter what, I don't think, unless they maintain top four success for like 10 plus years, a decade, are they really going to be able to compete? But I do think that they are a talented enough side. We saw it last year that they can compete, and I think what hurt them at the end, which we may see again, is their depth, is that they just kind of got tired. They got exhausted because the way they play is just, it's a very taxing style for sure. The way they press, which I really think is what really did City in at the end of the day, is City was just not able to feel comfortable. None of their players looked frantic, like they had never played a rondo in their life. But we all know that that's Pep Guardiola's main thing.
The handball, it's been a big weekend for the handball. You consider now that VAR is implemented, that decisions would get easier and easier. Clear and obvious is what the thought is from FIFA. But right now it seems that nothing is clear and nothing is obvious about the way that these decisions are being made. Kurt?
You hit it right on the head. Like, it's absolute. Like, every single one, you have no idea really what's going to be the call, because you have so many handballs that you've witnessed where you go, all right, and then it's not. And then the ones where, what can the guy do? But I think we were talking about it in the group chat earlier, Josh, you said cut off his arm. That would be their only option to avoid the shot, and it's still rewarded a penalty. And it's going on in every single league. It's contagious. We were watching the Premier League this morning, and we were all talking about it. And then later on, when Juve played, it was the same thing. 2 goals for 1 each, so at least it was even. But both of them very different. And as much as I like more goals, everyone likes more goals, but we want it authentic, genuine, like from a beautiful play down the wing or a beautiful cross or something along those lines. And a penalty just feels cheap.
Well, Kurt, my question to FIFA is, who wants this? I mean, what are defenders supposed to do? Today, the penalty was given on the handball by Eric Dyer in the death of the game against Newcastle when Spurs were up 1-0, which was a header into Dyer's arm. And the thought from FIFA now is that the arm, if it's above the shoulder, it doesn't matter. It has to be called a penalty. And my thoughts go out to the referee, because it's tough to make that decision. It's a hard decision to make, but within the law of the game, the way it's set out right now, that was the decision that he had to make, because that's the rule. But is the rule right? I mean, especially when you consider that Eric Dyer was jumping up against Andy Carroll. He's a Gronk. What is Eric Dyer supposed to do? Have a flail like a dolphin and jump up with his hands behind his back? It doesn't make any sense.
I know it's interpretive and it's difficult. It's a hard job, but right now it's leaving sick taste in your mouth after watching a football game. Like, I can't imagine. Like, how were you feeling watching that Tottenham, your Spurs, get your win just ripped away from you?
It's shocking. And, to be fair, Spurs probably should have been up 4 or 5-0 at halftime. And it's our fault that we didn't win. But we're talking about a header that was going into the ground that hit an arm that was called a penalty. And then that's 2 points taken away from a team that was controlling the entire game. My thought behind it is, if we have VAR, we have the technology to go back and look at these plays that are leading to handballs, that are leading to penalties. Why can't we look at it and say, this ball was going in the nets, therefore, if it was off the arm, then we'll call it a penalty, we'll give them the shot, and we'll give them the great opportunity for the goal. But if the shot is not going towards the goalie, if it's not going towards the net, if it's heading into the ground and it hits the arm, how is that taking away besides the fact that there's no way Eric Dyer could have known that was even coming anywhere near his hand, considering he was backing away from it. I mean, if it's going in the net, give the penalty. We have the technology to look at that now. We have the technology to look to see exactly where that ball was supposed to go. Jeff, I'm sorry for cutting you off and leaving you so silent for so long. I'm going to let you go ahead and tell us what you think about this whole situation.
It's funny because, like, we've all been affected by it, right? And I never want to see Manchester United win because of penalties, and then once again, Bruno Fernandes on the spot. and it's just like, oh God, because it just sickens you, because then, then you get the other people like completely discrediting your win. And to be fair, Manchester United did not play very well. Like, Marcus Rashford, clearly, like, he is a god amongst men, but whatever. But my main thing is, you got to get the Marcus Rashford love in there. But my main thing is just like, it's kind of like what you said. I kind of want to piggyback off that. Like there has to be some level of like, okay, clearly this is going to the defender's arm. Whenever you jump, just jump in the air. Try to get really, really high. You have to lift your arms away from your body. And you know what? This thing comes down to sports in general. And I'm going to compare what most of these situations are, where it's usually a defender getting that handball, right? The Italian FA, they were talking about it, I think, last week. And they were saying kind of like, oh, we don't want too many penalties. We don't want to ruin the game. Okay, well, like, that's you taking these new rules and just mudding them up. But then we see Milan and Ante Rebic. The ball comes down onto his chest, rolls off his arm. He gets, wrapped up in the box like a football tackle, like an NFL tackle, and then he gets a penalty. How does that make any sense? The only reason he's even in that position to score is because the ball fell off his arm. So clearly there's also something against defenders, and it's just like, it's so unfair to be a defender. Can we just say that? Like, their job is hard. You're trying to defend this ball, and it can ricochet any which way, and it'll end up in the net, and you look like the idiot. Everybody's going to say that this guy's trash, this, that, and the other. And it's, how in the world is that your fault? And I just think you guys are so spot on with the fact that, like, we have the technology to see, like, beyond reasonable doubt, was that ball going in the net? Did that arm stop it? I think it's really as simple as that. And same thing with Tottenham. Tottenham should have gotten away with a win. And Jose Mourinho shouldn't have to walk off the pitch early because of some terrible ruling. I think it is really as simple as that. You have the replay, learn how to use it.
So moving on, gentlemen, we blew it last week, man. I got to tell you, we certainly blew it. We jinxed Bayern Munich. We jinxed the Bavarians. I don't know if we jinxed it or there's a mojo in the air, but today, last 4-1 against Hoffenheim, and they didn't look very good at all. They played sort of a B team as well with Joshua Zirkzee up top. They also benched Leon Goretzka. Jeff, what happened to Bayern today?
Bayern just had a really tough loss. And, Hoffenheim is definitely no team that you can look past. Kremerich had an amazing goal near the end. He also got a penalty. You know what? Everybody just has those off games. Bayern looked amazing, but they're not going to go undefeated like that. They're just not. Like, it just, how hard that is. There's other, like I said a couple weeks ago, other teams want to win too. And sometimes you're just not going to get it, no matter how talented you are. Bayern had a lot of great chances. They had a lot of possession. And, when you look at them in Dortmund, sometimes the ball just doesn't bounce your way. Like, it just doesn't. Like Dortmund, I believe, had like 60 or 80% possession in their game as well. They did everything they wanted to do. They just weren't efficient enough or a little bit unlucky.
And Kurt, go ahead.
Yeah, it's more of the same. What a brilliant thing it is when you win the treble, because the next year can start and we're not freaking out. Man City, we're ringing the church bells. We're checking for Pep Guardiola to see if he's still here. Bayern, yeah, I'm with you. I'm not concerned. Like, as you said, Josh, this was a B squad. Clearly, they're not really too concerned with the beginning of the season. Like, look at last year. It wasn't as if Bayern ran out there, like, with 10 straight victories to start the season. They struggled. And they had a fantastic second half, which propelled them to their title. So, no, everyone's fine in Bayern.
So, fellas, like we said, the transfer window is coming to a close. 1 week left for teams to make signings, solidify their places in what's going to be a very difficult season for a lot of teams. By the time we record this next week, all the business will be done. So one chance left for the Ultras to make some signings and talk about some rumors. Kurt, I'll let you start it off.
Well, I'm focusing on two clubs in particular. One, which just part of me wanting them to get more active and make moves makes me kind of sick. But I'm going to start with Inter Milan. Part of the reason that I at least thought that Conte agreed to stay was ownership said, hey, we're going to really splash the cash. We're going to add to this team. And don't get me wrong, they've added some nice older players. I like Vidal. And of course Conte does. He had success with them at Juve. They're a good team, but I was waiting for them to really make a splash. I look at N'Golo Kante as that perfect player for them. If they got him, honestly, I would see Inter as a legitimate threat to Juve. And look what they did last season. They were really strong. But N'Golo Kante would be my dream signing if you're a Inter Milan fan. And when it comes to Real Madrid, I don't know what they could have done. They haven't really made any big signings. If you hear anything, it's about them loaning off some of their young players or making sales. And I think a lot of that has to do with the financial climate we're dealing with. Yes, they're they're one of the biggest club. The money they are supposedly have, but in my beliefs, I think there's a lot of debt there too. And you look at the last time they splashed out a ton of money, and that was Eden Hazard. Frankly, he's a fat slob. I might eat McDonald's. I've been sipping on this cup the whole time. But last time I checked, no one's knocking on my door asking to pay $165 million for my services.
Maybe they would be, Kurt.
Maybe they should. You've seen me hit a ball. It's pretty impressive. However, I break down. But again, I'm not Eden Hazard. And I'm sorry. I always thought he was a coach killer when he was at Chelsea. And now he's arrived at Real Madrid, and he's doing a very good Gonzalo Higuain impersonation, except for Gonzalo scored goals. Eden Hazard scored 1 goal in La Liga last year. 1. And it doesn't look like he's going to be any better this year. He's still fat. So I don't know what they could have done, and I think I don't see them doing anything.
Well, Jeff, like Kurt said, it kind of is a weird year. Everyone's not really sure where FFP stands right now. Of course, the climate with the pandemic and everything on the go. No one's sure how much money even any of these clubs have. Jeff, who would you look to make a big signing before the end of the window?
First of all, I just want to say that is probably the most body shaming I've ever heard on any program.
Body shaming is fine.
maybe man to man. We'll leave it at that. So we'll all allow it, Kurt. We'll allow it. But I think we've been talking about Manchester City, and we've been talking about their issues, and I would love to say the guy that I already said for Manchester United to bring in Wilfred Ndidi to be the solution to Manchester United's problems for Manchester City rather. But let's just say he's not available in this case. So Manchester United make a good move. I think that the guy they could use is one that Arsenal is in the running for, and that is Thomas Partey. I think he would be really, really, really good for them. He's got an engine. He's experienced. And I think his defensive savvy playing in La Liga, moving over to the Premier League, I think that's a great transition for him. He's not going to cause too many fouls. And he can also play with the ball at his feet too. He's not just, some midfielder with no skill or anything like that. So I think Thomas Partey would actually be amazing, because then you can look at it and say, have a fair look at your center backs and say, okay, look, they got the cover that they needed. So now let's figure out who actually needs to come in. Is Ake more of a guy you want on the bench to come in if we need him, or do we need to upgrade there? But I think right now Thomas Partey would be perfect for them, allows Rodri to do more of what he wants, and I think it fixes a lot of City's problems and probably keeps them in much closer contention with Liverpool.
Yeah, well, I'm going to focus on 2 clubs. The first one's probably going to be a bit of a surprise to you. I think Arsenal are looking pretty good this season, especially when we at the Ultras believe that Manchester City and Chelsea are going to struggle heavily on defense, and that will lead to a few defeats for those 2 clubs, which leaves an opening for Arsenal to really push for that top 4, not only top 4, even top 2, top 3. When you consider what's happened at Man City, and since the departure of Mikel Arteta, it's kind of been downhill. I know that's a bit of a jump, especially considering he was the assistant coach, not the manager. But I like what Arteta's doing at Arsenal, and honestly, they've re-signed Aubameyang. Lacazette's still an excellent striker. They've got so many options on defense that eventually it'll probably work out for them. Gabriel looks like he's stepping in and being a decent player. But where it lies in midfield for me in Arsenal, that's where they need to strengthen. Ever since Mesut Ozil kind of fell off, they haven't really had a central, they haven't had an outlet in midfield. I'm not sure that Dani Ceballos is that guy. And for Arsenal, they were rebuffed by Lyon earlier this week for the signing of Hassan Aouar from Lyon. Of course, they had a 50 million bid that was said no to. But I think that he could be the guy. He's a complete midfielder. He gives you that attacking outlet that I think they need a lot. But he's good all over the midfield. And I think that if Arsenal can really solidify themselves in the midfield positions, they can really push for those kind of top 3, top 4 standings. And as much as it pains me, I do think that Arsenal are only a few signings away from having an excellent season, especially when you consider how poorly they did last year. Jeff, who's your second club?
My second club is Borussia Dortmund because, they have pretty much everything there, and they've been strengthening the depth, which has been massive for them, I think, but we've been saying it, right? Depth is the key to a lot of championship winning sides. They got Thorgan Hazard last year. You got Reina coming up. You got so many English players. My God, they just love picking up the English talent. Maybe they're trying to make a push marketing-wise in England. But I think what they also need is someone to back up Erling Haaland, because I think we mentioned an episode or two ago that, once Erling Haaland, when he wasn't there at the beginning of the season, Dortmund wasn't as effective. And then when he came on, he was great. And then when he was injured, they weren't as great again. So they need to make sure that they don't have such a big drop off again. And I think, to me, that guy you need to bring in is Divock Origi. Divock Origi has been amazing for Liverpool. They got Minamino in there now. So I think this actually makes a lot of sense. I mean, if they can somehow prime away from Liverpool, he can get some decent time, give Erling Haaland a break. And you got a guy that is a capable scorer, that doesn't mind being the backup. And in those close games, maybe you need to give Haaland the rest because he's running out there like a madman, like a road runner. You have the perfect guy to slot in there and say that we won't fall off as much. And that might be the only way that they can stay with Bayern.
I think you could tell by the look on me and Kurt's face that we didn't see Divock Origi coming out of your mouth anytime soon.
But at the same time, I know you said earlier, Jeff, you have no future as being a football scout or a manager or nothing, but that's I like that. That was a beautiful fit. I could see that happening.
As long as I got the Kurt stamp of approval, I think I'll take that.
Take that with a grain of salt.
Boosted me.
So my second club, I mean, nobody has had a more turbulent offseason than Barcelona, obviously, with the almost departure of Lionel Messi, Bartomeu almost being booted out of the club, probably rightfully. And there's no one at Barcelona who's having a really good time besides 17-year-old Ansu Fati, who today couldn't win man of the match because he's not even 18 years old. But Barcelona are going to have a weird year. They're going to be under the limelight the entire time. They're going to be criticized and ridiculed for every misstep that they take. They just signed Jorginho Dest from Ajax, who's a young American wide back. And now they're looking to sign Eric Garcia from Manchester City, of course, a guy that made a few big mistakes today that ultimately led to City losing. So the idea for me behind Barcelona is they're having an identity crisis more than anything else, and they need to shoot a little bit higher, I think. They're letting go of Samuel Umtiti probably in the next week. Ronald Koeman as a manager to me just seems like it's not Barcelona standard, and that's just the point I'm trying to make is Barcelona need to raise their standards back to what they were at one time. Hopefully it results in the end of the Bartomeu era at Barcelona. I really don't think it will. It's going to be a tough season. They need to make a marquee signing before the end of the window, or it's going to be even more of a struggle than it already is. So, gentlemen, before we leave, we're going to do what we always do and have the quiz from here to there. You guys excited?
I'm pumped.
Warmed up.
Kurt's all warmed up. All right, so how the quiz works is I'm going to come up with a player. I'm going to tell you the route they had throughout their career, where they started, their loans, their transfers, where they ended up. And just from the teams that I name, you guys are going to have to come up with the player. When you've got the player in mind, buzz in. First one to get it right wins. So today we've got a man who I'm sure we're all aware of, and he was another journeyman throughout football, another man with a lot of passports. So he started his career at Real Madrid, went out on loan to Leganes first, then out on loan to Espanyol, then out on loan to Mallorca, made a transfer to Mallorca, then made a transfer to Barcelona. Jeff, you buzzed in.
Is it Kubo?
Not Kubo.
No, damn. Oh, wait, no, he's not a journeyman technically.
Yeah, not quite yet. Could be. So after the move to Barcelona, spent a few years there, then transferred permanently to Inter Milan. Then, this one's going to give it away, transferred to Russia at NZ Machalakakala, however you say that team. Transferred to Chelsea, then Everton. Kurt, you buzzed in.
Is it Eto'o?
Samuel Eto'o. Kurt, on a winning streak, 2 games in a row. Jeff, I'm sorry, man, but you're going to have to pick it up a little bit.
I'm digging myself a hole here. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get out, but yeah, jeez.
I'm a little disappointed in us that we didn't get to him earlier than that. Because he is such a legend.
Honestly, as soon as you heard the name Anzi Machakalakala, you should.
Yeah, but there was a lot of rejects that went there for that brief stint in history. Like, I hope in 25 years they have like a reunion party, because that team had such a brief history of amazing club players coming out of nowhere, and then it just.
And Samuel Eto'o is certainly one of those amazing players. Only retired last year in Qatar. He had a 22-year career.
Mercenary.
One of the great Barcelona strikers, you'd have to think. All right, gentlemen, that's all the time we have for today. Please, guys, remember one last time to like and share the video, subscribe to True Sports on YouTube, and follow True Sports TV on Instagram. For Kurt Black and Jeff Wall, I'm Josh Piercy. Join us again next week on The Ultras on TS.